Imagine a packed courtroom, tension crackling like lightning in the air. A blind black girl stands at the defendant's table, her cane tapping nervously against the floor. The judge raises the sentencing paper, ready to declare her fate. But just then, the girl lifts her head and says firmly, "Don't read the sentence yet." What follows silences the courtroom, shatters assumptions, and uncovers a truth that shakes the legal system to its core. You won't believe how her voice turned the tide of justice. Don't scroll. This is the story that left the world speechless. Subscribe now for more true-to-life twists you'll never. It all began on a stormy Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, where the courtroom buzzed with whispers and the weight of injustice pressed against every wall. 19-year-old Amara Collins, a blind black girl from the South Side, stood silently in an orange jumpsuit, flanked by two indifferent guards. The prosecutor wore a smug expression, confident in the slam-dunk conviction he had orchestrated. Her public defender sat slouched, defeated, barely flipping through the messy folder that contained the scraps of her case. The judge, an older, white man with a stiff demeanor and a tired gavel, had already lifted the sheet of paper that would declare her sentence for a crime she swore she didn't commit. Amara's alleged offense? Arson. The fire had gutted an entire building, an old law office where she'd interned through a community program for the visually impaired. There were no casualties, but the damages had totaled nearly $1.2 million. The evidence was stacked like a wall of bricks. She was the last one seen leaving, her fingerprints on a discarded lighter, and surveillance showing her distinct walking cane. But what the court didn't know, what Amara had kept locked behind trembling lips, was a truth darker and more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. So just as the judge's voice cracked through the silence, saying, "In the case of the state versus Amara Collins," she took a bold step forward and declared, "Don't read the sentence yet." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The bailiff instinctively moved forward, but the judge, stunned by her courage, raised a hand to stop him. "You may speak, Miss Collins, but understand this is highly irregular." With a deep breath, Amara nodded, the edges of her lips twitching, as if she could feel the magnitude of her next words. "Your Honor, I know how this looks. I know that every piece of paper in front of you says I'm guilty. But there's something nobody has bothered to ask me. Why would a blind girl burn down the very place that helped her see the world in new ways?" Silence fell again, heavy and skeptical. She continued, "I was framed, and I can prove it." The courtroom erupted in murmurs again, but the judge narrowed his eyes. "Then you better start talking, young lady, because your window just got smaller." Amara's fingers trembled as she gripped the microphone stand. 3 months ago, I started working at Lexington and Row as a community intern. They gave me tasks no one wanted: shredding papers, organizing files. One day, I heard a conversation. I wasn't supposed to, but I did. There were two voices, one male, one female. They were arguing about laundering money. The man said, "We'll pin it on someone who won't fight back. Someone like the girl with the cane." I didn't say anything back then because I was scared, but when the fire happened, I knew. I knew it was them. The judge leaned forward, intrigued now, doubt flickering in his eyes. "Do you have names?" Amara nodded. "Gerald Brooks and Andrea Lang, partners at the firm. They orchestrated the fire to cover up fraud. The lighter they found with my fingerprints? It wasn't even mine. I don't smoke. I've never held that model before in my life. But I know that lighter was passed around during the office Christmas party, a party I attended. Everyone touched it. There should be more prints on it. But the police never checked." Across the room, the prosecutor's expression shifted from smug to rigid. The judge glanced at the prosecutor. "Is this true?" he asked. The man stammered. I mean, we only tested for hers. The rest seemed irrelevant." The judge frowned. "Convenient." Amara pressed on. "There's more. My cane has a tracker. My brother installed it for safety. That night, The tracker showed I left the building at 7:12 p.m. The fire alarm didn't go off until 7:46. I was already home. Her brother, sitting in the gallery, stood up and held his phone high. I have the data. It's all timestamped and synced with the cloud. The judge's gavel slammed down. Court will recess. I want digital evidence submitted immediately. And I want Gerald Brooks and Andrea Lang brought in for questioning now. What followed over the next 48 hours would shake the city's legal system to its foundations. Investigators uncovered a network of fraudulent transactions, hidden client accounts, and falsified evidence stretching back years. Not only were Brooks and Lang arrested for arson and fraud, but 2 officers from the precinct were found complicit in burying alternative evidence that would have exonerated Amara. The jury, originally instructed to find her guilty, was now dismissed. A new case was opened, this time with Amara as the key witness. National media descended on the story. Blind girl outsmarts entire law firm, the headlines read. In interviews, Amara never bragged. I just wanted someone to listen. She told CNN, her voice gentle but fierce. Being blind doesn't mean being blind to truth. What no one expected, though, was what happened 2 weeks later. The judge called a private hearing, inviting Amara and her brother. He cleared the courtroom, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Miss Collins, you don't know this, but I have a granddaughter who's also blind. Watching you stand up here reminded me that justice is not sighted. It listens. It learns. It adapts. And it owes you an apology." Then he stood, removed his robe, and handed her a certificate. "With the power vested in me and the mentorship program of the court, I would like to offer you a full scholarship to law school. You've proven you belong in this room, not as a defendant, but as a future defender." Amara's lips parted, speechless for the first time. Her brother cried. The courtroom erupted when news leaked, and hashtag Amara for Justice began trending nationwide. Donations poured in. Blind advocacy groups lifted her story as a banner of hope. What began as a sentencing hearing turned into a revolution in how the courts treated those who were often overlooked. But the final twist came months later, when Amara, now interning at a civil rights law firm, walked past the same courtroom. She heard a familiar voice. It was Judge Harmon. He saw her, smiled, and said, "I was hoping you'd stop by. Want to sit in on today's case?" She did. And this time, she sat behind the bench, not in front of it. And she wasn't just watching. She was preparing for the day she'd wear the robe herself. Because when the blind girl told the judge not to read the sentence, she didn't just change her verdict, she changed the system.